the world who have gone cashless. Now, the Western countries are really welcoming India's demonetisation move. Most of the experts that I've been talking to all day believe that eliminating black money will bring back transparency and strengthen the economy. And add the goods and services tax to that mix, and they feel we have a recipe for success. But how is the Western world who have already done this actually faring? Are they happier being cashless or prefer using hard cash? Now let's take a look at Sweden as an example. Recent reports have suggested that Sweden is looking into launching its own digital currency. Now just imagine a currency-less digital world. The e-krona that Sweden plans to launch could be a step in that direction. This could also make Riksbank the first bank in the world to have digital currency in circulation. But there is some sort of a discrepancy here. We're now joined by Claes Aronson, the business editor of Radio Sweden, to walk us through what the buzz about e-krona really is. We are also going to bring in our other panelists in a bit. For now, we've got Dr. Suyash Bhatt, who is a renowned Indian economist. And very shortly, we will also be joined by Jasper Reed, who is the managing director of IMM, to help us understand what this international cashless economies are really all about. Now, let's start off with Claes, who's joining us live from Sweden. Claes, now, cashless Sweden, are we likely to see that soon? There's some sort of a discrepancy there on whether y'all are really going cashless or not. Walk us through where your economy really stands as far as demonetisation is concerned.
Actually, at the moment, Sweden is quite cashless. I think 15%, only 15% of the population use cash more than they use credit cards. So Sweden is already quite a cashless country. But yesterday, the vice president of the Riksbank and the Central Bank of Sweden suggested that we should have e-coronas, digital currency in the future in like 2 years in Sweden. And that means that you can just get the money immediately from the Riksbank, from the central bank. So you wouldn't have to use a commercial bank to get your money.
Now, is the digital currency that we're talking about right now the future of a larger digital world, so as to speak? Sweden is almost going cashless. India has demonetized 500 and 1,000 rupees notes as well. Now, do you think this is going to be the future? Do you think that many more countries going forward are going to be latching on to this? Because Korea also has announced that by the year 2020, they would probably go cashless as well. What are your thoughts on that? And I'm going to also bring in Suyash to answer this question in a bit.
Yeah, I think that is the future. But still, when Swedes travel abroad, we are always surprised that other countries still use a lot of cash. So Sweden, I think Swedes think that this is like a near future for the rest of the world. But I think it will take a long time, especially for countries like India and even you just have to go to Germany, that is close to Sweden, to understand that they still use cash a lot. So I think it is the future, but we have to wait for quite a long time until the rest of the world is cashless.
Suyash, what is your take on this now? Digital currencies, many countries are really adopting it. Is this really the future of a digital world that we're talking about? Is this also really a future for digital India that we're talking about? Do contextualize this on the back of demonetization move that the government has really made, and how important it is for us today to follow suits with the other countries and what they're really up to.
True. So in real life situation, I think this is the way forward. But the only thing that I see as a challenge in case of India is how many people have we brought in terms of the digital band that we talk about. So how many people? First issue is identity of people, and second, they trying to talk about in terms of spending money, bringing them on some kind of a common platform. So world over, you may have something like a blockchain, which is probably used for tracking the transactions. People are talking about maybe using these new innovative methods of softwares like blockchain for probably enabling or enhancing transactions in the economy. But the challenge in India is you need to first bring all these people on board. Once they come on board, then we can talk about, a digital currency or completely digital format of transactions. From an economy perspective, it's a very good move. Why? Because if all currency is in digital format, it's a very first thing, it can be taxed. Second, it can be very closely monitored as to who's doing what. And both are very good from a government's perspective. But I'm not too sure in terms of general public, the way I think it's the 8th or 9th day, and how people are perceiving it. It's still something which is to be seen as to how welcome, how much welcoming is this from a general public perspective. From a government perspective, I think it's a perfect decision that they have taken, and the developed economy, I think they can understand, because they have done almost all fintech startup, whether you talk about Square or you talk about Coin or anything that happens in US, it's all around this payment gateways, new concepts where you can facilitate transactions. And as we say, in economics, that the more transactions happen, the better is the growth in your economy. So it's something very good, but it is for a country like India, where if you see the statistics in last 40 years, you have FMCG company like Colgate, which could sell only 45 crore toothpaste in a year today. But you have mobile phones, so you have 99 crore mobile phone connections. So if you tally it, you can connect that people talk more on phone than brushing their teeth. So the kind of reach, and still you have not tapped the entire market. So you first need to get the entire population on board, and then probably talk about completely currency-less economy or something like that.
So Yash, I love the way you put it, that people talk on the phone more than they brush their teeth. I mean, a really good comparison right there to understand really the mobile phone penetration in our country as well. Now that brings me to another new topic, which is e-wallets, and picking cue from what Suyash said. And of course, I'm going to bring Klaus in on this one. Klaus, now e-wallets to kill black money. What's your take on this, and what is Sweden really doing? What was the whole idea with Sweden trying to go cashless, and how successful have you been, and have you all replaced actual currency with e-wallets, and what's the frequency with which the normal citizens really end up using these e-wallets?
Actually, I think I'm not quite sure what you in India mean when you say e-wallets, but we have this. A lot of Swedish people have this application called Swish that we always pay with, and we use the smartphone.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. In India, we've got LiveQuick and MobiQuick and Paytm, and what Swish you're talking about is exactly the e-wallet that we're talking about. Yes, go on.
And actually, that is something that has grown only the last 2 years in Sweden. Before that, it didn't really exist. And that is something that we use a lot. I use it a lot, especially if I go to and have dinner with my friends. I use it a lot to one of us pay the bill, and then all of us are sending money through this application to each other. And that is something that is quite new in Sweden, actually. So even in Sweden, that is a quite cashless economy. That is something quite new, but because we didn't really trust it. We didn't really trust it in the beginning, but now today, especially the last 2 years, everybody uses it, and I think that is the reason why the commercial banks now are criticizing the central bank. Because they think that we don't need the e-currency. We don't need like an e-krona e-crown from the central bank, because we already have all these applications. And the central bank is saying that, well, the digital currency, the e-crown, could be a way to allow people to stay away from the commercial banks. If you, for some reason, don't want to do a bank, you don't trust in a bank, then you can just go to the central bank. So that's the idea of this this e-crown that they are suggesting now.
Now, see, e-crowns is what Sweden is likely to go with, and eventually, who knows, your entire currency might be replaced with e-crowns as well, but only time can tell what will happen. But now, a little bit of experimentation that you all have done so far with e-wallets and e-currency. Have you all faced any kind of practical, any kind of legal, or some sort of technical issues by going cashless? What is the problems that you as a country are now encountering? Because that's something that we're going to pick cue from for our Indian economy as well, because you know, we've announced demonetization, and if this has been successful, there's no reason for India to not be successful.
Yeah, actually, I think it has been a success, the e-wallet, or the Swish as we call it. And the reason why it has been a success is that we only have one application for it. So all the big banks, they have gone together to make this application. So you use the same application for every bank. And that I think, I don't know what the plan is in India at the moment, but I think that is one of the reasons why it works so well, that we all trust this one application. And actually, I haven't seen any major child diseases from this application. It has worked very well, and I think the people are adapting to it in quite a high speed.
And no kind of technical issues there that, you know, you're trying to make a transaction and your e-wallet crashes, and then what do you do because you're not using currency anymore? So any kind of inconvenience or any practical issues that you all are facing with e-wallets at this point of time?
I think we not with the e-wallets, and I haven't seen any frauds coming from it. But of course, we had a lot of problems with the credit cards. We have seen a lot of frauds. I think all Swedes, in one point of time, have had problem with losing money from your credit card. I don't know what you call it in English, but it's skimming. Like it's like they hack your credit card and take your money from it. So I think that has been a problem for a lot of people, but the banks are always paying you back the money, because this is great business for the banks to have the credit cards and the Swish application, because they earn more money from it. So actually for the banks, it's really important that this works. And the banks have been talking about this application for many years, but only a couple of years ago they started with this e-wallet. And I think the reason why they waited so long is that they didn't want to have big problems with it from the beginning, because then everybody would say bad things about this application. And now I actually think people in Sweden are quite happy with it, and we use it a lot.
We also have Jasper Reed, who is patched on with us. He's the head of IMM right here. And we have Sayash Bhatt, who's the leading economist. And of course, we're talking to Klaus Aronson. Now, Klaus, staying with what you just spoke about, of course, you highlighted the disadvantages of going digital as well, with the kind of credit cards fraud that you all have been seeing. But at the same time, the e-wallets really are working out for you. Now, should digital currency be completely used to complement the existing currency system, or do you think that it can absolutely replace? And it's very important because there's a huge difference between the two. One school of thought says, let's replace all the currency we have and go completely digital. Now, does that work? You all will have to tell us on the basis of what kind of success Sweden has seen. And the other thing is that you bring it in parts and show it as a replacement to the existing currency that we're using. What's your take on this, Klaus?
Yeah, I think in Sweden we'll go cashless in the future. I think it actually will replace the paper money. So we will use the digital currency. But what the central bank is talking about now is going one step further and avoiding the banks, and that I think will just be a complement to the existing system. I don't think that many people will actually get the e-crown or the e-currency immediately from the central bank. But I think in the future, in like 10 years or something, it's very possible that Sweden could be a totally cashless society. and that would of course, even in Sweden, even we have this the black market, or what you call it, with people that doesn't get their wages from proper companies and wants to avoid tax. Even we have a lot of that. So that will be a big change in Sweden as well. So going cashless in Sweden would still be a big thing. And as I said, 15% of the population is still using cash more than credit cards. So we have quite a way to go still.
All right, so now I'm going to bring in Jasper now, because we've just got Jasper joining into this discussion, and I'm going to come back to you, Klaus, on this one. Jasper, you've been listening to the conversation halfway through this, but I'm guessing you've got a sense of what we're talking about. You think countries like Sweden and other European nations and the Western world will show a way forward to a cashless or a semi-cashless global economy? What's your take on this?
Well, good evening, Chasey. I think while I admire the cash-free evangelism of our Swedish friends, I'm a bit more sceptical. I think monogamy in currency is rather risky. The point's been made by other panelists around fraud. I think that's the biggest underlying issue with having a single platform and a single approach. And look, in the end, this won't be for everyone. If I look at where we come from in the UK, which is a rural environment, people are super uncomfortable with digital in its various forms. And in the UK, we've seen things like the Totnes pound, which itself is a rejection of digital. And I think there's an interesting thing here, because while this is all technologically, I'm sure, plausible, I wonder if in time there'll be a backlash against this as a form of sort of central control. And I think there's a lot of issues around abuse of the system. So I'm not for monogamy in terms of payment systems.
So that also brings me to another pertinent question. And Klaus, this goes out to you because I know you want to leave early. Is digital currency the way forward for an increasingly digitalizing world today? I mean, Jasper just said that he does not propose this monogamy of sorts of going absolutely digital. You all have tried it in part. What's your take on it? 100% digital or not? What's your personal take on this?
Yeah, I'm actually not for 100% digital, because I think that could be problematic in some situations. But I think we should go close to that in the future, because it's very comfortable to stay away from cash, and I think it's a good thing for a society.
All right, Klaus, thank you so much. We leave it at that. Klaus Aronson there joining us from Sweden. Unfortunately, he had to leave, but we are going to be continuing our discussion with the other panelists, Jasper Reed, and of course, we've got Suyash Bhatt, who is a leading economist, who joins us on this discussion. Suyash, you were listening to what Jasper and what Klaus had to say about a completely digitalized economy. Now, I'm going to come to you. You've been tracking global economies for many years. Now, what do you think are the practical, legal and technical impediments of any country, for that matter, going cashless, and especially an emerging market like India or the rest of the emerging markets in South Asia as well, when they plan to go cashless? What are the problems that they could really encounter?
Right. So just to give a context for each of these scenarios that you spoke about, why these economies are going for the digitization or demonetization, there's always a reason. So for in case of Sweden, they used to have a lot of bank robbery, and the solution was to make, come up with a digital currency. Another emerging market like Kenya, where M-Pesa as a platform is used very popularly. So you have law and order problems. So if I carry a lot of cash, there's a threat to my life. So it's better to deal through a digital platform. Whereas if we talk about countries like India or other emerging market, the basic problem of to begin with is establishing an identity of a person. So most of us are still struggling with trying to establish some kind of identity of the person, who's either borrowing or probably lending or even transacting. So first we need, because the scale that we are talking about, it's not few million, it's like this half of the world that you're talking about, which stays in this part of Asia, and so many people, you need to establish some kind of an identity and then allow them to bring on a platform where they can transact. For a very simple example, this demonetization 6 or 7 days or whatever time frame it has gone through, in the 4th day we were seeing that big central banks or state-owned banks like State Bank of India, their servers crashed and they stopped transacting on credit card, debit card. All these cards were rejected, so your transactions were not going through. So that's the kind of volume that you're looking at when you push more than 1 billion of population to suddenly transact online. Do you have that kind of capability built up at the back end? And second, when you also do some kind of rationing of changing of currency and all that, what we are asking right now is also some kind of identity. Do you have an Aadhaar card, or do you have some format by which you can prove your identity? This itself is questionable, because there are a lot of people who probably have not even taken an Aadhaar card, and even our Supreme Court at one point of time rejected the idea of Aadhaar card as a concept for establishing identity. So we need to first fix some kind of a basic issue of establishing identity of people. Once you have done that, and then you can talk about bringing everyone on board and allowing them to transact. In principle, it's a great concept, but it needs a lot of back-end work to be done, and I think it's a long way to go for a country like India to completely go in a digital format, and I think the same holds true for even most of the emerging markets. In fact, countries like South Korea, which is considered to be developed, also had to come up with some kind of a incentivization scheme. So they used to call it as preferential VAT. So if I'm paying through card, I get a special treatment or some kind of a discount when I'm purchasing goods, and that made people to switch from cash to card. So if a developed economy where people are much more evolved, and you probably talk about people having some kind of comfort of dealing with money, even they had to push people to adopt a digital behavior. So then in a country like India, where you have problem of literacy, you have problem of multiple language, you have problem of identity, you have to first solve all these issues and then probably talk about something like this. And one more thing that I would like to add is something what Sweden has done. I think we also are working on something like RU Pay, which the government of India has come up with, which is a platform for settling or making payments. But I think most of the government effort should now be targeted towards bringing more people on digital platform and establishing the identity through some format or the other.
Right. So now we're talking about plastic money right now, in the sense that more people, in terms of the financial inclusion that is required from the government of India, really, for us to go cashless or even semi-cashless for that matter. Now, Jasper, I'm going to come to you. You've lived all over the world. You are a British citizen yourself. You've lived in India as well. What has been your observation living outside of India in the Western countries? Just to throw some sort of light on the statistics and the figures that we're working with, Germany has gone 80% cashless, which means 80% of Germans are now using plastic money and only 20% are using currencies. Australia is 65% in terms of going cashless. 56% of France has gone cashless. 53% of Canada and 46% of US has gone cashless. Jasper, why don't you walk us through your experiences all over the world, and do you see these figures drastically change over the years to come, and how much do you think India will be able to contribute to going cashless as well?
So look, I think, Chaiti, as your statistics indicate, the march towards the cashless society, certainly in Western economies or economies further ahead in the cycle, has been relentless. Sweden is a very good example of a country with an extremely high level of penetration of plastic and e-payment systems and the rest of it. So in those terms, clearly there's a lot of headroom for India. But I think ultimately, and this is a matter of conjecture, the idea of single platforms, or of there being total cashless societies, is probably a flawed one. And I think the thing that everyone needs to work out is there will always be a portion of society that either can't use plastic or doesn't want to use plastic. And I think the latter of those categories is interesting because, as I've said before, I'm aware of many people in highly advanced economies that are rejecting the idea of digitization of their money, whether it's for fraud or whether it's frankly for a more subtle thing, which is to do with a feeling of being controlled by someone else. So to summarize, really, yes, there's a march towards plastic and digitization, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if you'd see a backlash against that. And of course, we're in this sort of post-rational world, and if Trump and Brexit teach us anything, it might teach us to prepare for the unexpected, even in currency.
All right, Jasper and Suyash, stay with us. We're going to take a short break now, but before we take that break, I would like to highlight what's coming up on the other side of this break. Now, there are a lot of local currencies across the world. You've got the Totnes pound in Devon in England, you've got the Chiemgauer in Rosenheim in Germany, and many more such local currencies which experts feel really strengthen the economy. Now, these are parallel currencies that operate with the actual currency market as well. We're going to throw some light and get some interesting insights on that. And also, we did a demonetization move back in the year 1978, and apparently it did not really hurt us that much. Let's find out from a panelist on the other side the implications of that. Stay with us on WION.